Welcome to the Board Game Academic Podcast, where we explore the crossroads of scholarship, play, and practice. I'm your host, Christopher Carbone, scholar, educator, and of course, lifelong gamer. Each week this semester, we discuss with brilliant minds how analog games inform real-world practice, support meaningful change, and challenge us to think critically, whether in the classroom, clinics, communities, or beyond. This week, I'm joined by
Kathleen Mercury.
Hey, Kathleen, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fine. Kathleen, we're so glad to have you here on the podcast this week. And not just on the podcast for this one-time thing, but also on our board of Board Game Academics.
Yeah, that's been really exciting. Oh, I've been in this game a long time. I'm an old crusty 870.
She's got scars.
Right. 873-year-old witch here. No, but I will say, when I got started teaching kids to design games and I can go into my background, all that good stuff.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Going into teaching kids to design games, I mean, it's been a long time, like probably close to not 20 years, but we're getting there, right?
Wow.
And so for the longest time, the only way that I could really connect with other people and who also worked in education and in games in some way was through GenCon, GenCon's trade day.
Yes.
And then also I used to host the podcast Games in Schools and Libraries with Inverse Genius. And that was one of the most important forms of professional development for me, because that's how I actually just got to find out like what other people were doing, because it was such a small, new, burgeoning thing. And so I'm just so excited to see over time how much growth there has been in the game industry within academics and vice versa. So it's super exciting to be part of.
Yeah, it's a wonderful rediscovery of play and the opportunity and the opening that tabletop games provides for all of us to kind of explore ourselves, our skills, abilities, the people around the table, our own identity, and the world around us. And I think that renaissance is coming. It's here.
Oh, absolutely. It's not, it's no longer an anomaly. It's something that a lot of people have had some sort of like contact with, some sort of awareness of, whether they're in a class that had some gamification, that they're a teacher that they've played with gamification, therapists using games and all that. So, well, let me jump into who I am. So, and then we'll continue the party. So my name is Kathleen Mercury. I am, so I work, my business card says playing at the intersection of games and education. And so I've been really lucky to do that. So I've always been in education as a middle school teacher, and then also more recently at Cal Poly Humboldt up here in beautiful coastal, gorgeous California, where I've worked in the School of Education and I've worked with student teachers. And so my career has sort of shifted back and forth between when I'm doing actual direct work in games and education, and then also when I've just been designing games on my own. And so my first published game came out in 2021. And my newest game is coming out in a few months in the UK from publisher Sinister Fish. It's called Tulip Season.
Yes.
It's beautiful, cozy, light. I'm so excited about it. I hope they sell 18 billion copies of it in every gift shop in the Netherlands. And it is not about economics at all. In fact, the working title of that game once was the non-economic tulip game of the Netherlands, because people are like, oh, is it about the bubble? No, it is not about the bubble. Thank you, though. And so, but my big passion, my business card says that I'm playing at the intersection of games and education. But my big happiness comes from creating opportunities for people they wouldn't have otherwise. So that's whether I'm having kids design games in the classroom, or more recently, what I've been able to do, which has been really cool and how this has evolved, but I've been able to work with both Gamma and GenCon in creating professional development opportunities for people who are game designers. So this past summer at GenCon, I was the co-coordinator along with Andrew Peterson, the phenomenal Andrew Peterson of Ferris State University, where we did the new Game Design Academy at GenCon. And there our audience was more for people who are beginning to get into the field, everything from people who had never designed anything, were terrified but wanted to, all the way up to people who had been designing some things to not having a lot of success and actually getting them to a publisher or getting them signed, all the way to there were people who have signed games. So we had a wide range there, but definitely more towards the newcomer side. And then I've been working with Gamma the last couple years to create creator content, thank you, for game designers. And there we're really looking at, if we're going to say like levels 1, 2, 3, if Game Design Academy is level 1 and next year we're going to be looking at level 1, level 2, helping people advance. With Gamma, it's definitely a level 2, level 3 type of content. So how can we provide professional development for game designers who are working full-time or mostly full-time in the industry, whether they're freelance or with a company, and what type of professional development will benefit them in their careers. And so it's been really cool to be part of a lot of these opportunities. In addition to being on the board for BGA, I'm also on the board of the Game Academy, which is a nonprofit in LA, where it's all about using Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games to, it's not therapeutic, but to help kids with social emotional learning and, build friendships and develop social skills and all that. So for me, my happiness, as I said, comes from creating opportunities for people they wouldn't have. And I just feel so lucky that I have been able to do that. And so I'm just excited to be here and to help support BGA and share the good word and do whatever I can.
Well, thank you so much, Kathleen. Again, thank you for all the great work that you do out there, because what we've seen from BGA's standpoint is the wonderment and the ability of commercially available games to provide practical solutions and engagement for so many different populations. And again, above and beyond what the creators and the publishers and the artists and the writers, all of those different artisans had ever imagined, that actually goes into real play beyond the entertainment realm. And it's happening everywhere. So every new production, every new emerging designer is so essential for that ongoing dialogue and conversation that we want to have with other people, and even sometimes with ourselves, like that we can explore different elements of who we are. And again, it's a box of cardboard typically, but again, the abilities and the benefits of it are almost infinite.
Well, and one of the things that I like to point out to teachers too is teachers are designers. And what fundamentally changed my life towards my approach to my classroom and my games is when I went to, I took an online Stanford D-School boot camp. We're all about design thinking, and just literally my thinking changed overnight. But teachers are designers. A lesson plan is a boring game. Obviously we hope it's not. We'd hope it's not. But it has all the same components for game design, where you have an objective, you have the instructions, you have the role for players, you have, how you play the game. There's the feedback loop where players figure out how well they are. And so because teachers are, practice ones, you have this skill set for design. What I think is really interesting is how we can take what we know about games and game design mechanics and structures and help teachers adapt their curriculum into designing better games for the classroom. Like that's sort of where I see my next sort of iteration of my career going, is focusing on helping teachers at every level develop better classroom gaming experiences, because a lot of it is just knowing what mechanics are, how you use them, what are the different ways. And kids love games, adults love games. We'd rather play a boring game than not a game at all. So what can we do to help support and develop this? Because like you said, there's so much explosion. Serious games is a whole other category of games that didn't necessarily exist that long ago, but it's because of how people are seeing the value of gaming structures in the way that you can create experiences that are just so incredibly meaningful. And I think there's so much potential there. And I think we were talking before we started recording about just where we've been and where we are and where we're going, and just how much potential there is to just continue exploring what games can mean within education and other settings.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really important concept about the teachers maybe not thinking themselves as designers, as creators, but curriculum, in classroom design, lesson plans, and then obviously teaching students how to learn, or how to kind of create their own systems of learning, or how everyone learns differently, or how everyone engages with the content differently, is that what we're trying to promote early and often, and including your work, Kathleen, everywhere, is we're all creators, we're all designers, we're all crafters in order to create worlds in which we can inhabit.
Mm-hmm.
And the tabletop game is just one element of play in which we can engage with. But if you can start seeing the world around you as, something that you can create and design and construct, then its openings are just endless, and
Oh,
you can
yeah.
do so much more.
Well, and this past year, it was kind of funny because when I went to some game conventions, people were like, "Oh, what games do you have? What have you been working on?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Well, um, I worked on 2 projects with CERN to help,
Yeah.
teach kids 8 to 12 how to learn about cosmology and particle
Yes.
physics. So that's not necessarily in a box, but that's up on the CERN website. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
I also created for a nationwide summer reading program. This came out this summer. It was called Build Your Character, and it's just adorable. So it was a supplement to a library summer reading program's reading log. But basically, for every reading target that you hit, you could pull a quote from your book and fill it into a blank narrative character sheet. And all the categories were really accessible: what I look like, things I can always do, what makes me special, and a very simple leveling up system where after you write down a quote, is this a mental ability? Is this a physical ability?
Yes.
And so that could have just been it for people to come up with their characters. But then I also came up with all these different challenges that libraries could do, so that when somebody comes in and they want to use their physical ability for this challenge, they could maybe like take a step forward closer, just really simple stuff. And so that was really interesting in of itself, because you're looking at, what is this system? What do libraries have in common? The answer is very, very little. Who knew? I didn't know, for example, I just thought, oh, everybody uses the Dewey Decimal System. No, they do not. No, they do not, which is great, So it's like, what do I have to work with? And so that's one of the things when it comes to opportunities for people to use games in meaningful ways,
Yes.
And create those spaces. All of a sudden, I'm creating a way for people to create a character that feels very personal, that it's really connecting them to their reading. And if this, motivates people to keep reading, but not only just to read for the sake of reading, but also like, what am I reading that I can take from this and put into my character sheet to create this avatar for myself, or this completely other being for myself? And would that change the books that people start to read, because maybe they feel like their character's a little boring? Well, I better read Jack Reacher,
Sure.
so I can just start kicking over stuff or punching people or whatever the fun things are,
Yes.
So I think there's so many opportunities that exist that, I mean, we're not talking money, but we're talking about
No.
opportunities,
Sure.
because, but that's the thing, is like, this is how we get started. And so I will say that for the CERD work and also for Build Your Character, I was honored and to partner with Guardian Adventures and to work with them in developing these projects for these clients. So, so that's what another great thing is, Megan, and what she's doing. There's just so many opportunities that other people are trying to create to keep building what is available and how we can create meaningful gaming experiences in people's lives. So, for people who are like, how can I get started doing this? A lot of times I ask to do things, and people like, yeah. And if you can actually do it, the work is there, then it can build. So, I think the potential on how we can look at games and the benefits of them are just, there's just so much potential and possibility.
Like you said, it's all about creating a space. So whether it's a space for yourself or your character or other people, other gamers around you, and then on an internal level, they feel opened. They feel the ability to create. They feel the ability to be dynamic in kind of new ways. And I think it was Marianne Williams who had talked about, you don't play small, right? Play big, be big.
Yeah.
Let your light shine so that instinctively other people will see that they can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's wonderful. One of the wonderful things about educators is, as you said, like, what are you working on, like, specifically? And you're like, all right, well, there's this kind of, physical product, but like, educators are crafters in every step that they take and everything they say in their classroom. Their movement is intentional and opening. And the way in which they talk to their students is an opening to bring in more conversation and to create new spaces, because oftentimes students have a very limited understanding, and it's our jobs to open them up to understandings or pull that kind of understanding out, and then allow us to create systems like games that allows it to flow naturally and with other people on their own. So, and that happens every day and every step in everything that we do. And I don't think we think about that enough. I think it's a really important element of who we are and who we are to children, but also as adults. I think we have to remember that. I think we have to keep that very sacred, that we are creators, we are scholars, we are researchers, we are people that are grasping for greater meaning and to serve. And again, to create a tabletop game is a service to others, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And well, it's funny too, because when you said, be big, I did a TEDx event. So my TED talk is called Be a Rhino, Big, Stupid, and Run Until You Hit Something. Because that's kind of been my MO. And big is just having big ideas. And the most important lesson I learned at a young age was when my sister Karen announced that she wanted to be a clown in the circus, and that she was at 18, she was going to start trying out for Ringling's clown college.
Nice.
We were just like, where did this come from? I mean, Karen was always super creative, like one of the most artistically talented people. But so she tried out at 18 and didn't get in, and tried out 19, had a better tryout, didn't get in, and then came home on her final tryout, or well, not final, but came home when she was 20 and was just floating, that she'd had this amazing experience. The clowns had taken the tape VHS. This was a while ago. And we're watching it over and over and over again. And as her family, we were like, oh no, this is terrible. Like, she thinks she has a chance. Like, what are we going to do when she doesn't get in this time? And then she got a phone call. And you don't get a phone call when you get a phone call and you get in. And it was such a good lesson. And you want everyone to be able to have those sorts of experiences. But even as her sister, someone does get to do the cool thing. And it might as well be you. And just think about, what that means when you for the comfort, that's one of the reasons why I've got the confidence to try. Like I've met people whose names are on boxes before I tried to put my name on a box.
Yes.
They're like, well, if this person can do it, like I can do it too, And so I think having that, the space and the ability to, to be able to just try, and knowing, and that's one of my big things and what I do is, how can I help people find access to the people who can either tell them the right way to do it on your own, if you want to have your own business and Kickstarter, self-fund, and however you want to do it, or how do I help people find ways to have access to the people in the industry who can give them so much knowledge about their practice as a designer, but also who might be willing to publish their games. And so that's a big part of it. The other two parts, being stupid means you're going to be really bad at it, but you keep going. And I think that's important. And the other part too is really just about persistence. For me, the difference between a published designer and one who isn't is persistence, because you're going to just deal with all kinds of stuff. And if you can't handle people telling you no, then this is definitely not going to be a field for you. But that's the thing, is just like, it's possible. And so the more I can create those opportunities for other people, the happier that I am, So yeah. So if anybody has any cool, fun ideas for GenCon or for Gamma, reach out, because we're in the process now of, we're already getting, there's a lot underway already for Gamma Expo, which is coming up. And then we'll be we're going to start talking about GenCon next year relatively soon. So if there are ways that we can create opportunities for other people, that is my jam.
That's wonderful. And again, like you talked about the failure, but like I think it was Edison who said, they asked him about how many attempts it take him to create the light bulb, and he was like, one, but he also knows 100 other ways or 1,000 other ways.
I think it's 10,000 is what he said, right? Yeah,
so,
and I think that's one thing too, is over time, one of the biggest sort of like steps you have to take as a designer is to learn how to separate yourself from the work.
Yes.
That so now I know I make bad games, and I use the word bad very intentionally, because bad is something we become so afraid of. What if it's bad? What if it's bad? Oh, it's gonna be bad. But The real trick is how
Yes.
do you work to make it better? So embrace bad,
Yes.
because then you're like, I know it's bad. I mean, if a game works the first time when you hit the table, 10% of what you thought was going to happen, hoot nanny, that's a success. Good on you. Well done. But for me, what I've also learned is separate yourself, but also that any information is positive information. If literally everybody at the table hates everything that I've done and I do it again and everybody hates it and everybody hates it, great. Now I know that is truly bad. And maybe it's better to shift, because in every game that I've made, I will always consider the most important contributions to my games have always been the things that other people have suggested. And because things that that were sitting right in front of me and this never even occurred to me. Some have been so obvious, but I just needed, but your head, you just think in this one direction, so, and I think that's one thing that when you're talking about the BGA conference coming up,
Yep.
is having the ability for other people who work professionally as educators in other fields, as using games in the classroom. It's so hard to find playtesters, and it's so hard to find playtesters who understand what you're trying to do as an educator. You might be in a different field, but they understand the needs of the academic environment and the goals. And so when I've had the opportunity to play test, like at NASAGA one year, when I was keynote speaker, I did a version of this espionage simulation I did with my students, and some things went really well and some things didn't, that had gone well with my students, and people asked some really good, challenging questions. What are your learning objectives for this? And, for me, it was, we'd been learning all about espionage. And so I wanted them to use the espionage skills, which at the time was still a lot better than things they were doing in other classes. But it was it was an opportunity for me to really examine what I was doing, why I was doing it, and for growth. So that when, after teaching board game design for so long, it wasn't just, it's a legit board game class. And if you're interested, all of my resources can be found at KathleenMercury.com, and it's all for free. I monetize nothing. I have to pay to host the site, and they keep raising it every year. But it's all free because I want other people to have these opportunities. Use all my stuff. It's my Google Drive. Have at it. If you find a dead link, let me know. And so anyway, I got off my track. Where was I?
You were talking about game design in the classroom.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so if what I did as a teacher was only to teach my students how to design games, I wasn't serving them. Because if they never designed a game again, what would they take from it? But really, it was about honestly, like the social emotional learning part of it. I worked with gifted kids. So how to give feedback, how to get feedback, how to collaborate, how to work with others. Those are skills everyone needs help with, not just my gifted population, but that's who I had. So that's where I focused. And so that was the most important thing for me at the end of the semester, when I would say, outside of game design, what will you take from this? And it was those kinds of things that the kids said. And that's how we set kids up for success. That's how we create people who can take on challenges, can do interesting things, by building in that sort of like big, stupid sense of confidence, where it's like someone can throw a weird challenge at me and I'm going to come up with something. Just think about if we all had that type of mentality when it came to, reaching obstacles. And obviously understand people are different, and some people have had to deal with a lot of really terrible things that have made it hard to sort of access those sorts of levels of self-actualization and success. Totally get it. But if we can help instill that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And especially when it comes to children and students, the failures and the attempts, and allows them to see that they can get things wrong. And from a child's perspective, adults do everything right and they can't do anything wrong. They're so strong and they're so big and they're so confident and they're so knowledgeable. And therefore, as a child, as a student, as I'm doing my academic lessons, learning my ABCs, engaging in real content, I feel the failure on a constant basis, because failure is learning, right? I'm attempting. I don't get it. I'm attempting. But I'm learning each and every time. And I think that to see that as from an adult's perspective, from a teacher's perspective, that there is an attempt, there's an effort, there's an outreach, there's a design, there's an intentionality behind all of it. I think, again, like we go back to the Marianne Williams, quote about, when you share, when you get big, and again, I'm sorry, I'm butchering her quote, but again, internally that allows other people to feel the same way, and students can reach. And again, it goes back to play, which is really what we want students to stay in, that kind of mode, to be creative and not to fear failure, because you and I, we've played thousands of tabletop games over the years. We fail most of them. We lose these games. Yeah. And we still enjoy them. We come back to them.
Right.
So that's great experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, with my students, the most epic failure I ever had was when I was playing Can't Stop with students. And I told them, I am going to roll every turn until I bust or I win.
Excellent.
And we'd played before. And on one of my turns, I captured one column. And then I captured a second column. And I was rolling and I was rolling and I was one away.
Wow.
And I busted. And they were screaming. We were all screaming. And they're like, you should have stopped. I was like, no, I wasn't. But it's like, I will never forget that heroic loss. I don't know that I've had wins feel as amazing as that did, because it was just so great. It was just so funny because I almost did it. Because if I said to somebody, I once won Can't Stop by, on one turn, I mean, it's possible. And so sure. But what's even more unlikely is you got all the way but one. That's incredible. That's so
a better
fun.
Story.
Yeah.
It's a much better story.
Oh my gosh. It was so great. It still makes me laugh to this day, because I was also proud of myself for trying. You know what I mean? Hey. So anyone else who Can't Stop, next time you play it until you win or bust. It might take you 6 hours to get through the whole game, but maybe not. Maybe not.
And again, I think that it's that kind of enthusiasm and unbridled, drive that game designers, content makers, educators, practitioners, teachers, anybody out there in either the service, educational, or creative field, you have to move boldly. You have to be crazy to get out there and just throw yourself out there. But there's a freedom in that kind of, like you said, jumping off the cliff and then starting to fly. And I know, having gone to the classroom, especially surrounded by a room full of, junior high school kids, there's nothing more daring than doing that.
Right.
So, we want everybody out there to feel the same way, to feel that intentionality and that support, because again, we all have those moments of failure, but we know that those moments of failure are just the preamble to the success. Yeah. And again, even the failures are success because you're trying, and that's wonderful.
So I did 2 different game design workshops at Game Design Academy, and I've done lots of game jams and all this. But it was kind of funny because the order that they were placed on the schedule was switched. So the basic one is make a race game. And I've got a whole section on my website about that. The book that I'm writing goes all into that. But if you want to make if you want to make a race, if you want to make a successful game, make a race game using animals, because, race games are the most familiar structure. Sure. Animals have conflict. You can build that conflict into your game, and everyone can be successful with that. And so I did that, but that was on a Wednesday, later on in the week. I think it was the Friday. On the Wednesday, the first day of Game Design Academy, was my 2-hour intuitive game design workshop, where you have to create a game for people where there's no rules. The game is set up. So when people come up to your game, they have to be able to figure out how to play just by what the game looks like and the symbols. It's incredibly difficult as for any designer. And interesting, when I did this at Gamma with published designers, it was very different, the responses, but that's a whole other conversation. But the funny thing is so people are kind of nervous, but they're excited, right? They're ready for this. They want to do Game Design Academy. They're all this. And the first thing, so just before I had them actually get started, I said, I would never to raise up their finger. And, oh no, that was something else. But I said, I want everybody to repeat after me. I am pretty and smart. And so then people I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. Say it right now. I am pretty and smart. Yeah. And I think I did a couple, I am a game designer. I am a game designer. And it's just because it's one of those things too, where, it alleviated some of the tension I think people had going into this, how they found their partner. I said, look over at somebody right now and nod your head. Cool. That's your partner, And so just things to kind of bust people through those sorts of moments of I'm not sure, let's get the big ones out of the way. You are are pretty and smart. You're a game designer. You're going to come up with something. And the good news is if you hate it, this is going to be over. And then you get to move on to something else. And I think, so much about success in design is also what you're saying is having that mindset, as far as like being, just racing to show your ideas and getting play testing and collaborating, wildly and all those good things. My favorite one that I will probably talk about every game design jam from now until I die is bias towards action. You can sit there and think about it, or you just start to do it, and you'll be doing it as you think about it, but you'll iterate so much quickly. And it's just one of those things where it's such like, even when I'm sitting there thinking about an idea, like in my head, I'm screaming bias towards action, like just start making it, because it's so hard when it's still perfect up, So I get it as a designer, because I feel like I'm better at making games better, but I'm still really good at making really bad games. I apparently do not understand the human experience whatsoever. I can't do math. I'm kidding. But, it feels like that when you're putting something on the table. But, you kick it. And then it hits to the point where it's like, oh, this feels nice.
It does.
Like, I like where this is at, And I had a game that I had a silly idea. And I pitched it, and nope, it was a no. And I tried it again. I pitched it, and then I worked on it. I knew what I wanted, and I got it there. And so even if the game doesn't make it out there, like I got it there, and that's the best thing. And I want everyone to have that feeling of satisfaction.
And it's always good to be surrounded by colleagues and to hear this over and over again, because I think it's one of those things that's easy to forget, because the naysayers and your own internal negative language kind of pushes you off of that. But really, who we are naturally, as we were as children, right? As a child, you see a child create a game out of nothing. Or my niece, who's young, she's 7 now, but like I would put a game in front of her, and she would create something completely different out of it. She's like, "This is the way we play it." I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Like again, so
I love that. I wildly encourage that. Absolutely, because honestly, if you buy a game, you own that box. You own all those toys. Those rules are not a contract. You can do whatever you want with it. And I will also say, because when I talk game design and the need for components, I got tons of games from thrift stores, garage sales, because, Monopoly, chef's kiss, right? You give me metal pieces. You give me a lot of little universal components in the forms of houses and hotels, and a lot of paper money. And I've got Star Wars Monopoly money. I got Pokemon Monopoly money, all of that. But I had this big box full of just kinds of components, and kids would dig through and this and that. And the thing is in my heart, that was not just a box of junk. Every single piece in that box was a decision, was a conversation, was a debate, was a priced out list. Everything in there was someone's dream at one point that we used as like scrap, basically.
I know.
All of my games at some point are going to end up, in a landfill in the earth somewhere. The aliens are going to be like, wait, why were boats racing around Grease like this with these movable wedges, like in the game Grease Lightning 2021 Whiz Kids? Hey. So, but so I think there's an element, like as a game designer, like I take myself seriously because for me, but also like we make toys. The most important thing I think is that we help people feel that internal sense of success and progress, and that they are able to do hard things and accomplish things. And when you actually get to see it and you hold the box and your name is on the box, like I did it. Day. It is. It's so cool.
Well, speaking of those opportunities, Kathleen, you mentioned earlier BGA, Board Game Academics Conference 2025 will be hosted at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. So literally the place of toys and games.
I've gotten to go there in the past, 2 years ago, I think it was. And let me tell you, the behind the scenes tour,
which we're doing,
is amazing. And I will tell you that as a woman designer, like, and this is where, and I'm not being silly, like I get choked up over, the Olympics, oh my God, I'm a mess. But when I got to go in the back archives, and they have a nearly pristine copy of the Landlords game, designed by Elizabeth Meiji, the game that later became Monopoly, and all the story and the history behind that.
The round board.
And so when I got to see that game, and for me, when I think about all the things that I've been able to do. I remember when I went to, this is totally a side note, I went to Egypt by myself, and I was really nervous about going by myself. But it was also one of those things, it's like when I've had those moments of being nervous, it's like, Kathleen, you aren't just doing this for yourself. You're doing this for every other woman who never had the opportunity to do so.
Yes.
And so when I'm seeing this game designed by this woman, that even for everything that happened afterwards, the good news is her name, her legacy, it's known, it's part of who we are now. And it was just such a significant moment to me. And what I love about the Strong Museum is they're doing something at a comprehensive level that no other, people may have like little exhibits about games and stuff like that, but this is the definitive archive. This is the definitive source. So even if you only work in one avenue of games, I'm primarily tabletop. I don't do too much outside of that, but they have everything stem to stern. It is an amazing place to be. The hands-on exhibits they have, everything that they have is so cool. One thing that was really cool, we went back in the archives, Rio Grande Games gave them 2 copies of every game. And I was like, oh, can you give me that copy of Samurai? Ha, 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 ha. But the cool thing is my ex-partner, he designed a game for Rio Grande. And so 2 copies of his game are sitting there forever and ever in the archives there. And I was like, that's amazing, to be able to have that type of place that is just holding all of this art that we've created, these cultural pieces that we've created. The Strong Museum of Play is an amazing place to be. So go. 100%. I mean, especially with the conference, like winner, yes. Have your have your organization pay for you to go, and then you get to go see all this. But it is a marvelous place. It is a lovely place to be.
Yeah, you'll find a full PowerPoint presentation of all of their different exhibits and collections on the bottom of our registration page. So please check that out, because it's not on their website, and it's actually nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some of the conversations we've had with the museum, is we want to bring all that stuff out again. So there will be curated tours for everybody, but again, more of that stuff will come out, so that we'll be able to engage with that in a meaningful way, and hopefully inspire all the future game designers or practitioners who use games in a lot of different ways. But above and beyond all of that too, obviously we're having a very big conference. There's a lot of different elements to it. Primarily, it's really supporting our academic journal. So a lot of researchers, scholars, game designers write scholarship research articles for us. And we get to see their presentations, their work in action.
And that was one thing too, when I was looking through the list, Eric Zimmerman, whom I got to work with at Game Design Academy, who we just developed an immense, dare I say, fandom for each other, just because of the work he's doing, and got to see the work that I was doing. And again, you can know of someone online, but it's different when you see their work in action. And that was super cool. Other people, Dr. Catherine Croft, who has her own company, was a researcher for the longest time in neuroscience at Duke, and then went into the classroom to be a high school chemistry teacher because she just really loved working with kids. So
100%.
You just have some incredible people who've taken their wide range of experiences and are using that to create these experiences for others. And that's one thing I love about like the diversity of all the sessions that you have, the diversity of ideas of all the people, the backgrounds that people have. And if you're someone who's like, I only do tabletop design, great. Go to as many RPG sessions as possible, because you've got, there's always going to be something where you think about narrative differently after seeing it through that very specific lens, but even within RPGs, everything that people are doing are so incredibly bold and interesting and different. So yeah, there's so much good content there over 2 days. Like, it's really going to be a magical, incredible experience.
Yeah, and Dr. Croft, actually, she'll be demoing one of her game designs at the conference. So you'll have an opportunity to work directly with her and play with her games. And again, I think that networking, scholarship, conversation piece is so incredibly valuable. And then obviously everyone giving presentations, you'll be able to communicate, connect, have a dialogue with them that will add. You might actually see your ideas and your conversations in their future journal article presentations, which will be fantastic.
Right. So. And I think that's one of the most important things about BGA is all the work we're doing to help elevate this discourse, elevate the work that people are doing. For so many people, especially in academia, I mean, you have to publish, and to have a source that understands, recognizes, and is trying to promote and support this work to make it part of academic discourse overall, to make it part of the conversation, to see the games that people are doing as incredibly valid, effective methods of instruction, of changing how people see the world, see themselves in it, I think is just so cool.
It's a wonderful opportunity. And again, you get to meet all these emerging scholars or these well-established professionals in the field. And then all the attendees are also scholars, game designers, educators. I mean, just all different interdisciplinary kind of fields. And again, it's a sharing of the love and the passion for serious play and also of service to their community. So again, it's such a great vibe, and we really want everyone to attend. So please check us out, boardgameacademics.com/register. There's still time. We would still love for you to attend. And again, I think this is a really great opportunity to show off all of the great work that everyone has done for many years. And again, to thank all of the great game designers out there that have allowed us to have openings for service and education. And oftentimes they don't even get to know that themselves. So we're really excited to show off all of the great things that are being done with their games that they had no idea about.
Right.
So it's great.
And that's, like I said, going back to my very early days of games in schools and libraries, I got so much out of just talking with other people. So even if people aren't presenting, even if you're not sure what you want to be doing within this space, what a cool way in a small, intimate environment to be able to meet and network with other people, to discuss ideas informally, to forge those, connections that can lead to the next great collaboration for you. There's so many opportunities that come. This is not a conference of 3,000 people. This is something where you're going to be working in small spaces with like-minded people sharing the same ideas and passions, just expressed differently. And what a cool opportunity that is.
Absolutely. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us. We've
so
had such a
welcome.
wonderful conversation. And again, you mentioned at the beginning, please mention it again, where they can reach out to you and connect with you. Because again, you do so much great work, but it's everywhere.
Yeah. So the best way to get a hold of me, let's see. So my website is KathleenMercury.com. You can email me directly through the website. You can also, I'm on LinkedIn, Kathleen Mercury. The nice thing about my silly last name that I picked for myself many years ago is actually great because it's distinct. So that's cool. So you can find me, so Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. But my website, but remember, it's all free, KathleenMercury.com. It's all free. And so, I'm always happy to talk about ideas, reach out, connect. Please do so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, think critically and roll critically as well. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.